Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and on the program this morning, we're going to be talking with, it was our first guest on this show. Corning Mayor Bill Bolin will be joining us in just a little bit. We have had a couple of days off here, so we've got a lot of catching up to do. Let me put up my contact information, and thank you to everybody who sent me comments from over the long weekend. I really appreciate it. I'm playing a little bit of catch up on that as well. And there's the contact information. Feel free to reach out at any time. I do really appreciate it. So a couple things. First of all, I mentioned that school is back in session, and I said I believe something to the extent of good luck to the teachers and the students, but I was admonished. I don't think that's the right word, but I appreciate that someone reached out and highlighted, hey, Frank, it's not just the teachers going back to work. Don't forget the cafeteria workers, maintenance, administrators, bus drivers, and monitors. You are right. So good luck to all of them headed back into work after this extremely quick summer. I think we all agree on that. Now, Labor Day is always an exciting time if you are a political person, because that's when everything really starts kicking off. And I have a few things here, if we have an opportunity to get to it, because I want to spend a lot of time with the mayor. But President Biden is going to start blanketing your football game with ads that focus on his, what I guess you would say is Bidenomics. The idea that they're trying to sell Bidenomics to the American people because it's been very, very unpopular. So why not throw those ads in football, which is extremely popular, and focus on a $25 million ad campaign. And it's essentially in swing states. So I don't imagine we'll be seeing them in New York, but our PA friends will perhaps see them. I did not see the rundown of where the ad buy is. The ad is called Got to Work. Got to Work. Speaking of Pennsylvania, I never thought that I'd receive so many comments, questions, just really attention on the interview that we had last week with Joe Tobia, who's running for Steuben County Legislator, about the Frankie Special. And this specifically is for Bruce out of Sullivan County, who was fascinated by a play that some had deemed unstoppable at a high school level. Yes, I really did appreciate Joe Tobia letting me spend so much time talking about my short-lived high school football career, because why else would you play high school football if it wasn't to talk about it many, many years later. So thank you to Bruce for your interest, and thank you to everybody else who reached out. I thought that was a very fun interview, and there's not much to talk about with that play, but it was a football play, 88 Superpower, that was deemed the Frankie Special. I got to run it a few times in a game. I think 4 times total. I think. I know the answer. So thank you to everybody that wanted to hear more about the Frankie Special, but that's about it. Not much more to tell there. So we've got to take a short break. We've got a lot to discuss. As I said, we'll be talking with Corning Mayor Bill Bolin. So get your questions in. Excuse me. If you have anything that you'd like to ask the mayor. On tomorrow's show, we'll have Sheriff Schramm out of Chemung County. And then on Friday, I almost hate to promote this. I kind of want to keep it a secret, but I think it's worth mentioning. We're going to be talking with Elisa and Sylvia again. They've been an on-running theme on this show. But Sylvia returned home to Italy. If you're new to the program, it was about ASSE.com, which is an international exchange program. And Sylvia was on the program early on, and then right before she left to go home. Now she's in Italy. Elisa happens to be there with her, so we're going to have an interview with them right from Italy. Thank you again for joining us here on Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Before we talk with the mayor, I wanted to mention this. I received it in my email. This is so fantastic, and I just wanted to congratulate the Corning Food Pantry, the Corning Community Food Pantry, for all they've done for the community. I'll probably end up talking more about this in the future, but they're having a big celebration for their 50th anniversary. This is, when you start looking at these numbers, so obviously you do the math, they've been serving our area since 1973. They are being recognized by many local officials for their 50 years of serving the food deprived in our area. They have clients: Bath, Hammondsport, Montour Falls, Lawrenceville, Tioga, Elkland, just to name a few. And they sent me, I'm so glad they did, because when you hear about organizations like this, and I know I talk about community a lot on this program, when you hear about organizations like this and how hard they work, and sometimes you may not even recognize it, you may not even realize it, but they're 100% volunteer. This, again, the Corning Community Food Pantry, 100% volunteer. No paid staff, approximately 75 dedicated year-round community volunteers. Duties are diverse. There's a lot that goes into it. But if you just look at the statistics in 2022, we have 2022 statistics. They served exactly, why don't I say exactly, 5,479 of our residents. 4,767 of those were children. Adults, 8,985, and elderly, 2,117. So you combine those all together, those numbers all together, 15,869 that were helped by this amazing organization, and they distributed 196,071 pounds of food from the food bank of the Southern Tier, plus an additional 18,647 pounds purchased from local retail stores and wholesalers. So I just wanted to say, I know there'll be a lot of congratulations to them, or maybe that's not the right word, congratulations, but just support for them as they look at 50 years serving our community. And I wanted to just be a part of it and say thank you for all that you do for our community. So we're going to take another short break. We do have the mayor coming up in just a little bit, weigh in on all the issues of the day. As I mentioned, we have a few things here about Biden, if we have an opportunity to get to it. More articles about, could the 14th Amendment keep Trump off the ballot in 2024? You know my thoughts on that if you've watched this program for any amount of time. I think the way that would divide our country even further, I think what that would do in general to solidify this notion that the former president talks about quite frequently, and many other people in that circle, that, the game is rigged against him and his supporters. I just think it would be very detrimental to the country, so it scares me that these articles keep popping up. I see the mayor is just about to walk in now, so stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Joining us in the studio this morning, we have Corning Mayor Bill Bolin. Thanks so much for being back on the program.
Frank, it's always great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Well, you are our first guest on this show.
Yes, indeed.
And that doesn't seem that long ago, but it's already been, I think, 6-7 months.
Yeah, and I got to soften you up a little bit. I mean, I remember your radio show. Everybody does.
Yeah.
I was speaking to someone last night, and they just said, it's great to have you on the air. It's a public service, and you do a great job.
Well, thank you. And speaking of public service, and that was very kind of you to say, but I want to talk first, before we get into the nitty-gritty, about your support and your work with Meals on Wheels.
Well, I'm flying the colors today. I've been a delivery person for Meals on Wheels since I came back to Corning in 2009. Right. It's a wonderful organization that in any given day will provide somewhere between 125 and 130 nutritious meals to primarily homebound seniors.
Right.
And I guess I'd like to promote, I know they need substitute delivery drivers. It's a really easy way for people to get hooked into community service For instance, I start my route, I'm there at 11 a.m., and I'm done and in my home or in my office at 12:30. So
Oh, wow.
it's not a huge commitment. So anyone who's interested in that, just contact Meals on Wheels.
When we talk about on the program a lot, getting involved in the community. So if someone's looking for that, this is a perfect opportunity. An hour, hour and a half.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's great. So I'm glad that we could mention them right off the bat. Now, when we had you on the program the first time, you were kind enough to announce that you were running
Yes, sir.
for mayor.
Surprised you did.
You did. I had no idea. So it's your final, that's your words, a 2-year term. You're running unopposed. So what are some of your goals looking for these last 2 years?
Well, I think the major goal is, for the first time in 20 years, we'll be updating our comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
And that's an opportunity for the community, the whole community, to take a pause, take a look at what our resources are, where we'd like to go, where we see our community in 5, 10, and even 15 years. So it's a wonderful opportunity. Last time we did it, like I said, 20 years ago.
A lot has changed.
It took and it's outdated. And
Yeah.
it took about 2 years. And
Is that right?
so if it takes roughly the same amount, it'd be a good way to go out.
That's right. And a lot of it, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you have a comprehensive plan, it is a lot about public input, right?
Absolutely, no, comprehensive. I mean, that is one of the tenets, the themes of that, is to make sure that we're reaching out to the community in all its respects. The committee that I formed is quite large. It represents all the constituencies and interested parties, including normal citizens, routine citizens, both from the north side and the south side.
What are you hearing so far? Has there been a lot of talk about the comprehensive plan?
Yeah. I mean, I certainly have my issues.
Right.
You know, I love to promote Corning as a world-class destination.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're at a level, and this is about looking and seeing, you know, where can we take it to the next level to make us an even better destination. And of course, that relates directly to the economy, which relates directly to things like, you know, level of taxes that we have to pay in the city of Corning. Fair and affordable housing, you know, that's something that I've been advocating for years on, and we need to make sure that that's provided to all the citizens of our city. Another passionate thing for me is trees and sidewalks. Over the years, we have taken down many trees and replaced few.
Yeah.
And, you know, we take for granted that these beautiful hills that surround us and trees creates the oxygen, pure air that we enjoy here.
Yeah.
And we just need to provide that not only for clean, you know, breathing air, but also, you know, making the city of Corning a walkable city with that kind of shade and canopy that we've known over the decades and years. So that's
and the same
one.
with sidewalks. You mentioned that. I mean, the safety issue. You want to make sure sidewalks are up for the people that want to walk, because this is such a beautiful area, especially in the season that we're coming up on, to take just a nice walk.
Absolutely. And, you know, just one more thing, Frank.
Yes, of course.
You know, the future of City Hall complex, Civic Center Plaza. I mean, we need to decide, is that the best use for that valuable land? I mean, if you think about just visioning out Market Street extending further into a commercial zone, you know, I think we need a public safety, consolidated public safety facility for our police, fire, and the administration of the city. So we'll be taking a look at that as well.
That would be interesting, wouldn't it, to extend Market Street? Because I know very often I've went from here and walked down towards City Hall. It's a nice walk.
Sure.
Why not add a little bit more? Because at one time I think that was more of more of a walking destination.
Well, there's a fountain down there.
Yeah,
when they initially did it. I don't know when that was taken out, but it was
Isn't that interesting?
Spot to go.
And then I know you've talked about this in the past, and you're passionate about it. But our parks.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, we need to concentrate on that. And the vision, again, is let's return our parks to what they were historically, a place for the community to gather and enjoy. And there's lots more. One of the things we're very excited about is that very soon we'll be opening a flight center at Stewart Park. And if you vision out that space, it's a wonderful, broad, expansive piece of land that's underutilized. And we're going to create a flight center. And that was the brainchild of City Manager Mark Reichman as we went through our park strategy a couple years ago. And it's going to have a lot of rockets, drones, kites, model airplanes.
That's great.
It's and it leverages our history in the area of flight and flying. So we're just going to develop that over the years.
And drones are so popular.
Oh, I mean, I'm just keen. I mean, set the pylons out, let the kids,
Yeah.
race and
Sure.
and obstacle course. It's going to be cool.
I'm not that good at technology, so I'm more of the kite guy. I'll fly
Me
the
too.
kite.
Just think about that, Frank.
Yeah.
And have a community kite night.
That'd be fun.
Dozens and dozens of people out there flying kites.
I'm more of a Charlie Brown, get it stuck in the tree kind of guy.
Well, thankfully, Frank, there's no trees out there.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, good. All right, I got to take a short break. Can you stay
Sure.
with us? All right,
Absolutely.
we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We're being joined by Mayor Boland this morning. Before we go into some other questions I came up with, we received one from a viewer, and it says, for Mayor Boland, there seems to be a problem with skunks on the north side. Is there anything the city can do to alleviate that situation?
Well, first, Frank, I live on the south side of 2nd Street.
Right.
And I can tell you that I know skunks.
Okay.
Out of our shed a couple years ago,
Yeah.
we pulled out 11 skunks.
That's unbelievable.
11. So I know skunks.
You
but-
pulled them out personally?
No. There's a wonderful guy named Jack who did it. But anyway, yeah. So I know something about that.
Yeah.
We got an inquiry a couple weeks ago, and that's a real nuisance. But the city does have a skunk removal program. If we need to put a little bit more money into that, we certainly are prepared to do that. And I know that Deputy Mayor Hunt and Mark Rassou over in those wards are on it, so they're in good hands, and we'll do everything we can.
That's great, and I knew it was on your radar at City Hall. It's got to be just one of those things that's kind of difficult to tackle.
Yeah.
In a way,
Yeah.
you know. Okay, so speaking of this kind of ties right in with the quality of life issues here in our area, and I want to talk, Corning specifically, obviously. Let's talk about some of the issues that you see as you're looking at your final 2 years.
Some of these things are not glamorous, Frank. But,
Right.
One of the
But
things
they're
that
necessary.
we're doing is we have 125 tree stumps in the city core. We've taken down trees and not been able to remove them. The city council last month allocated an additional amount of money, so that we're going to be removing all of those within the next couple of months.
That's great.
So yeah, and that's just one of those quality of life things,
And just visually, I mean, you see but they're not easy to deal with.
No, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So, and it's not inexpensive, but we're going to do that. The other thing is the spray and neuter, cat spray and neuter program that we have. And since we started that, we've had 89 appointments, roughly, spread between male and female. But the feedback that we get is people are really appreciative. Great program. It's been a long time coming, and I think everybody appreciates that this problem is not going to be solved, quickly.
No.
But people I talk to are committed to knowing that over the long term, this is a great program, and this is going to help our control.
And I would agree, because I know as someone that comes in early in the morning.
Yeah.
And going back to the radio station days until today, I've noticed a major difference in how many times I see cats running across the road, dead cats, the whole 9 yards. So it is working.
And it also, the program that we have is humane to the animals, so it works both ways.
Great. And then going back to parks, but I wanted to talk about the Denison Park Pond. I know, I believe we talked about that last time as well.
Yeah, I don't know if I told you last time, but just a little bit of a story. I was in my office, and a lady knocks on the door, said, "We'd like to speak to you for a second." So I figured there was one or two people that wanted to come in. Next thing I know, there's a troop of about 15, 12 to 13-year-olds that come in. They have fishing rods. And so they come in, and they've been down to the pond, and they say, "Mayor, we want to fish, and we can't fish." So I said, "Well, politician I am, well, the mayor's on it." One little kid in the back goes, "Okay, when?"
Yeah.
And then they followed
Good for
up.
him.
About 2 weeks later, I get this stack of notes that have cartoons on them, and one has a fish with an X through it. So anyway, but we're right in the middle of a study of greater water management in Denison Park. But one aspect of that will be, how do we get fresh water to that pond and restore it to its natural beauty?
Yeah.
And the nice thing about it, that's a study that we're doing, but the way that we're approaching it puts us in a really good position to apply for a grant to actually do it. So we're on a good track there finally.
Is there a time frame on that?
I think the study will be probably another 6 months.
Okay.
But after that, you figure a year, these things don't happen overnight.
No, that's
but
it.
we're on the right track, and we really do need to do that, because in the heyday, this is just a gorgeous spot, and kids need to be able to fish.
Well, and everybody used to go there.
Absolutely.
What was it that I haven't been over there in decades? What is it that it's just water management or water issues?
Interestingly,
Yeah.
the fresh water to that pond came from the old hospital.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So when the old hospital went, there went the fresh water,
Yeah.
and there it created.
Oh, that's that's
You
fascinating.
wouldn't think, right?
No.
Yeah.
No, wow, interesting. So we have a little time left here, but I wanted to focus on something I think we talked about last time. So again, I keep highlighting the fact that this is your final 2-year term. You're running unopposed.
Yeah.
So do you see a possible change, as someone who's lived through this as mayor, to the mayor's term of office? Would you like to see it increase to a 4-year term?
Frank, this is something I've been advocating for years. It's one of the goals that I have had in my term of office, is to change the term of office from 2 years to 4 years.
Yeah.
Last night at the city council meeting, we voted to advance that to a public hearing next month. Looking forward, assuming that it will pass,
Right.
that'll take a next step. The city council will approve it as a 4-year change, but that still needs to go before the public for a vote. It won't be this year. Too late for this year's ballot, but next year, look to decide that.
Have you heard from people? What are the thoughts on it?
Almost uniformly, people agree with that. Because you need time as mayor. If you're looking to do longer term things, you need that time. And plus the fact, if you're running for office every 2 years, you're really distracted. I don't care who you are as a politician. It matters. You're distracted. You're paying attention to that, and you're not paying attention to the business of the city.
And when it's one of the complaints that people have about Congress, right? Because you've got the 2-year term where Congress is a little different than mayor, don't get me wrong, but they're basically starting campaigning the day they're sworn in.
And they're exactly, Frank, and they're raising money, every day or every other day.
Yeah.
Constantly raising money, and that's just not serving the people's business.
No. So it does seem like that's going to be supported, but you also mentioned that goes up to a vote for all the residents.
That's correct.
That's great.
Whenever we change our charter, which is our governing document, that requires a vote of the people.
Yeah. And boy, if you could get that on the ballot for next year, that's a perfect year for it. Presidential race, people obviously more interest in it than just a local off-year election.
Absolutely. And I just should add one thing, that I made sure that the committee that made a recommendation, Citizens Committee that made a recommendation on that, I recommended that it be effective 2025. So it does not affect me. It does not benefit me. But it's a change I'm really welcoming.
Do you see any other changes as you reflect on your time in office that you'd like to see?
No, I think I'm pretty satisfied with the body of work that we've created. Really looking forward to that comprehensive plan, because again, that's where all aspects of the community gather together, and just what do we want our community to be going forward 5, 10, and 15 years in the future.
How can people find out more about the comprehensive plan?
Just follow it. There's any meeting is a public meeting. Anybody can attend, but also look forward. One of the tenets is to broad outreach to the community. So it's just not special interests that are participating. It's anybody that wants to participate, and we'll be taking that to the community. The community doesn't have to come to us. There'll be more than ample notice about what we're doing and how people can participate.
And before we go, because I feel like this is a tradition, I have to ask everybody.
Yeah.
What's an update, if you have any whatsoever, about the cannabis dispensary?
Completely on hold. As the chairman of the code committee, we are waiting for the state to issue final regulations, and they have not handled this process well at all.
It's amazing.
When they give us final regulations, we'll evaluate those to make sure we're in compliance. But we're on hold right now, just dead on hold.
So what does that mean for the people that wanted to invest and wanted to get involved in it? They're on hold too.
They're on hold. There's an applicant that wants to put a
I know.
cannabis dispensary in the old Leader building, and they are just flat on hold because we have no basis to act. It's kind of like flying the airplane while you're building it. It's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Wow, I mean, this is not even on the political side of things. It's just been a mess from the beginning to the end on this.
Yeah, I mean, you would think so. I mean, there are other states in the country
Yeah.
that have been doing this a long time. You would assume there's best practices that we could draw on, but it doesn't appear that's the case at all.
It was wild, wild west for a while when you know what it really was.
And it's all, again, politics aside, your
Right.
personal preference aside, to these applicants who are trying to invest in a business, it's not fair to them.
No.
Either say yes or no and have a basis for doing that. And right now we have no basis for doing that.
And to your point, again, it doesn't matter what you believe. If you're for it, you're against it.
Right.
I feel bad for the farmers that were essentially guaranteed that they thought it was going to be a boom for them if they started growing cannabis, and now you read articles all the time in the middle of summer that they're just sitting on a crop because there's nowhere to go with it.
And all up and down that economy,
Yeah.
the segments of that economy, it's just unfair.
Mm-hmm. It's been kind of a mess, but we'll see. Hopefully that changes soon. Well, Mayor Bill Bolin has been our guest this morning. That was old radio. I was reselling it. Your name's up on the screen. I don't have to say who you are. But thank you so much for joining us. And anytime you want to come on the program, just let me know.
Will do. Thank you, Frank.
All right. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. We got a little bonus behind the scenes. I knew what was happening. I don't want people to think I'm just staring off and losing track of time. It's just a little technical thing, but not a real problem. You get to look a little bit behind the scenes as I shuffle my paperwork. Thank you again to Mayor Bolin. And also, one thing I just want to highlight real quick that you just saw. I really like the fact that you can write in during this program. I also have to put a disclaimer out. If I ever miss your question, it's not because I'm keeping it secret or something like that. Sometimes you just get in the middle of an interview, and I don't want to get distracted by reading an email. I want to hear the response from our guests. So that's why sometimes when I take that break and I come back, I have the question. That works out really well. And I actually should have had on my list the skunk issue, because I know a lot of people have been talking about that. And because I think Allison Hunt brought it up, and I want to say, I can't remember if Joe Tobia did, but it's a major issue. So thank you for sparking my memory on that and letting me ask that question to the mayor. On tomorrow's program, we have Chemung County Sheriff Bill Schramm. He's going to be our guest. So if you have any questions for him, again, you can send them in ahead of time, or you can do what happened there live during the interview. I'll try to do my best to mention that during the program or while our guest is here. And by the way, Sheriff Schramm, when he's on the program, he's going to be telling us about the Unity in the Community rally. This is one of Dr. Coleman's events, Unity in the Community. That's Support the Police rally. It's at Wisner Park, October 7th from 1 till 2 p.m. It's absolutely free, open to the public, no tickets required. So we're going to find out more about that from Sheriff Schramm. Okay? All right, I think that plays all the catch-up I need to do. Oh, and on Friday, we're going to have Elisa and Sylvia calling into the program from Italy. So that'll be fun. If you've been a viewer of this program for any amount of time, they've been on twice to promote ASSE, which is an international exchange student program that was so successful for them. They just wanted to spread the word, and I love having them on because it's fun. They do a good job, and this one's just going to give you an update from Sylvia, how she's been doing. If you've been following her career, her school career here on the program. Okay, now let's get to some political issues of the day before, I've got time. So I mentioned that Biden will be blanketing the airwaves in swing states during the NFL kickoff. He's going to have an ad called Got to Work, and it's supposed to highlight what they deem are the benefits of Bidenomics. I know the polls show that it is not popular, his economic plans. So they're trying to change that with however you want to call it. If you want to call it spin, you want to call it PR. I think it is a tough sell because so many people are struggling to get by, struggling to make it, having to pick and choose what they get with their groceries or when they can fill up their tank again. So I think that's the main reason that they're trying to, some would say dupe, but it's tough when people realize, when you have an ad that says, never mind what you're experiencing every day, believe us. That's why the polling shows it's not popular economic plan. which, by the way, the White House was asked, the press secretary, Jean-Pierre, I always mispronounce it. I never remember which way it goes. So she was asked about the deficit and why it's doubling. What is the reason it's going up? And this was actually asked by the New York Times, which is interesting. The New York Times also had a piece about Biden's failed illegal immigration plan and having the open porous borders. So that's been kind of something we've been watching closely, because the New York Times, also known for being very liberal, also going after Governor Hochul a few times. But anyway, I'll continue. So the press secretary responded, I just said it can be a year to year. It can be very volatile. So they pushed back. At one point, clearly frustrated, she said, talk to an economist and they'll tell you specifically. So it's never good when it went down the rails like that, where you say, nah, just talk to an economist. Have them explain it to you. Now, some Democrats are turning on the president over the migrant crisis. Many New York Democrats, because they're dealing with it. They've got to worry about re-election, etc. New York Democrats are sounding the alarm. This coming from Fox News. That President Biden and other party leaders' failure to keep immigration under control has political consequences. I do believe it will have. Now, does that mean New York is going to swing and go red? No. I hope I'm wrong, but no. While New York State may be widely perceived as a Democrat Party stronghold, some local leaders have warned that issues like the mass immigration are not only disrupting the lives of New Yorkers, but the party's grip on the state. That's interesting. So they actually can see a weakness forming. Now, again, that could just be by district, could be by congressional district, assembly district. You know, these Democrat politicians are worried that it will reflect on them. It's a PR thing. New York Times even published a piece on Saturday with the headline, New York's migrant crisis is growing. So are Democrats' anxieties, suggesting the Democrat Party is scared that they will face a reckoning next year during elections. One example of some of the people that were upset over this is Representative Pat Ryan, a Democrat from New York, who was described as the lone frontline Democrat to survive the Republican suburban demolition last year. It was noted that the lawmaker teamed up with two Republicans to demand that Mr. Biden declare a state of emergency and broke with his party to support a bill to discourage schools from sheltering migrants. Ryan was quoted in an interview saying, "The number one thing I learned as an Army officer, when in charge, take charge. We are in a crisis. The president is in charge, and he and his team need to take charge." Now, so far, the response from this administration has been to ignore the crisis. In many ways, I believe, if you look at the policies and position he has taken since day one, it is to have essentially an open, porous border. So this is what's going to happen from that. Democratic congressional candidate Josh Riley called Biden's aloofness on the issue offensive and said, look, this is a federal problem and it requires a federal response. And I think President Biden needs to get his act together to help solve it. Now we have, speaking kind of that, the aloofness, let me figure out where I want to go next. I may talk about a few more things on Biden, but I want to go to the Republican side of the presidential race as well. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. And I forgot to mention it. Couple days off and I'm starting from scratch again. But I want to thank M.A. Neal Financial Services for being a sponsor of our interview that was with Mayor Boland, the M.A. Neal Financial Services section of the program. So I don't know why that escaped my mind. I think I was just excited to get in talking about all the issues with the mayor. There's a piece from Michael Goodwin that we don't have time to get through the whole thing, but I thought I may bring it to your attention. It's from the New York Post. And Michael Goodwin is suggesting that Democrats have to dump Joe Biden as their 2024 nominee. And what he looks at, and it's it's true in the sense of the polls showing how unpopular Biden's policies have been. This is kind of the kickoff with Labor Day. That's why Michael Goodwin released this piece. It's been eons since the president has enjoyed even decent poll numbers, but amid a glut of bad ones, last week's Wall Street Journal survey stands out. Listen to this. With only minor exceptions, it shows Biden and his policies, especially on inflation and the economy, are wildly unpopular. And this goes back to why I mentioned that the president is going to release those ads to play, $25 million ad buy to play during the kickoff to the NFL. So inflation, the economy, very wildly unpopular, and that the vast majority of all registered voters do not want him to seek re-election. That's all registered voters, not just Republicans, of course, Democrats and Republicans. Instead, they want him to turn out the lights and take a permanent vacation. Meanwhile, a journal survey of just Republicans paints such a rosy picture of Donald Trump's support that he appears to be on an unstoppable march to the nomination. We've thought that for quite some time. I know the former president, Trump, essentially said, I'm one indictment away from being president. And that, all these trials, it goes into what I was saying earlier, it solidifies what he's been claiming from the beginning, that there is a deep state against him. Now, whether or not you want to support that idea, whether or not you like Trump or you dislike Trump, that's worth noting, that this just confirms in many people's minds what he's been saying. And I know we had former Congressman Joe Sempolinski on a few times who said, you may not like Trump. You may be on the fence over Trump. You might even dislike him, but you might dislike the deep state even more. That's why I'm so concerned that they keep pushing, and I mentioned it earlier at the beginning of the program, they keep pushing this idea of, could the 14th Amendment keep Trump off the ballot? That only, quote unquote, confirms what he's been saying, but it also sets a very scary precedent. It also sends a message to a lot of people, Republicans and Democrats, that your vote doesn't matter. We don't really want to hear your opinion, because we're going to take the nominee for the Republican Party off the ballot. I just don't like what that would do for our country. But just to give you an update, the former president now holds a 46-point lead over runner-up Ron DeSantis, with the Florida governor's backing at just 13%, continuing its months-long decline. But it is among the larger group of registered voters from both parties and independents where the Journal poll has the worst possible news for Biden and Democrats. The top finding is that an astonishing 73% of all respondents believe Biden at 80, and an obvious decline, is too old to run for a second term. 73 of all respondents. Well, that's a piece from Michael Goodwin. As I said, we can't talk about the whole thing. I actually have to take a break right now, but you can find it for yourself at the New York Post. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Matt Gaetz is threatening to force a vote on Biden impeachment. And if that doesn't work out, he's talked about ousting McCarthy from Speaker. He expressed his frustration with the slow pace of the GOP-led efforts to impeach the 80-year-old president. He said, when we get back to Washington and in the coming weeks, we have got to seize the initiative. That means forcing votes on impeachment. And if Kevin McCarthy stands in our way, he may not have the job long. And we saw what happened initially with getting to the votes to put him as a speaker. I am kind of surprised it took this long. There may have been threats in the past, but to keep making that threat against McCarthy, because that's going to be, I think, an issue that he has, because there's just the different factions, like Gaetz's group of Republicans. So I'll continue. So let's hope that he works with us, not against us, but we've got contingency plans in the event that he is not as productive. also, I got to take another short break. One other thing about Biden before we go to break, there's an explosive new biography, and if you've been reading the New York Post, you're familiar with it. Some of the information that's come out from this book. It's called The Last Politician by Franklin Foer. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. The author, who says he had unparalleled access to the tight inner circle of advisors who have surrounded Biden for decades. And it describes Biden as quick to rush to judgment, and even against his top aides and experts' advice, that this is just a post here. This is how their headline puts it. Biden comes off as irritable, babied elderly man who regularly flips-flops when not bashing Obama. So you can find a piece on this of someone who read it, apparently, because the book came out yesterday, that goes through some of the, salacious might not be the right words, but some details you may not have been familiar with before. Wanted to mention that before we go to break. Then we're going to wrap things up. This is our last break, and then we're just going to bring it into the barn. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Aikman. We received a comment during break. If Biden thinks promoting his Bidenomics is a good idea, it definitely follows his out of touch with reality mental state. Well, I think, as you see with the immigration crisis and with the economy, they've really got to start spinning this as best as they can. I don't think it'll work either. I think, especially when it comes to Bidenomics, you've got people, same with immigration, but so affected by seeing it daily that they can tell you what they believe, but all it takes is you going to the grocery store, or all it takes you is putting gas in your tank, and you realize that it's a lot of fluff, right? By the way, CNN has a poll out that shows GOP voters broad support for Trump holds, with less than half seriously worried criminal charges will harm his 2024 chances. Well, that's why if they start pushing that 14th Amendment and try to get him off the ballot, there's going to be a lot of divide in this country, more so than we've seen already. Trump is the top choice for his party's nomination at the traditional Labor Day start to a more engaged campaign season, ahead of his nearest rival by more than 30 percentage points. Wow. 52% of Republicans and Republican-leaning independent voters support him, compared with just 18% for Ron DeSantis. So that's a little different than the poll we heard earlier. And Trump is broadly seen as best able to handle a wide range of issues. All right, there you go. So we are out of time for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you to everybody who joined us. Thank you to everybody who reached out with either questions, comments, concerns, or criticisms. I really appreciate that. I want to thank Mayor Bill Bolin for being on the program this morning. Corning Mayor Bill Bolin. Always enjoy him being on the show. He was our first guest here on Frankly Speaking on the television version of it. So appreciate him making the trip back here. Always fun to have him on the program. So tomorrow, Sheriff Schramm from Chemung County, so make sure that you tune in for that. It'll be right around 7 o'clock. Have a great day, everyone. This has been Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We will talk to you tomorrow morning, bright and early, and I've got to say, I look forward to it already. So we will see you. I got to find the right button here. We will see you then.